Okay, so this is GitHub Basics, GitHub 101 session 2. And last time we covered how to start a repository for your project on GitHub, for your lab project on GitHub, as a way of sharing everything. And we covered a few of the advantages of using GitHub and what it's essentially for. The repository is the place, which defines your project, or a screen or a hit to lead project or something like that, which has a kind of a theme to it and a consistency. So if you come up with a second project or a second screen or something else, you start a new one. The two big things that GitHub is for, I think, as we mentioned, one is as a place to collaborate with people, to share ideas and have a discussion about things and resolve things. And that's taken care of with the issues that we're going to talk about in the third session. So we're not going to do that today. It's a little bit more intuitive than what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to do it this way around. But the second thing, besides all the discussion stuff, the second thing that GitHub's really good for and is important for is as a place to have the kind of story so far. So it's the aggregation of everything in the project. It's where you can go to find out where we're up to and what the project's all about. Open projects share everything, but it's really hard to understand any kind of open project unless there is a summary somewhere that tells you what's going on. And ultimately, that's why in science projects we publish papers, is to have that summary of what happened. Now, if you remember, well, of course you remember, any science paper is quite short, right? So it's easy to digest it. There's an abstract, there's some intro paragraphs, there's a conclusion, and you can rapidly get an idea of what has been achieved and how. If you want the details, you can read through the entire paper, of course. If you want the real details, you go and consult the supporting information. And the supporting information is massively longer and more detailed than what's in the paper. So the paper is the distillation of the important things. And there's endless links out to other things. So in a paper, you'll have a table of important stuff or a diagram of something important. And then for more details, see supporting information, or for the extra data, see this data set, or go and download this file from PDB or something. So the GitHub wiki is the same. The idea is that there you have a bunch of stuff that brings people up to date really quickly. And so one of the key things is this story so far. Now, it's not just that, right? It's also other things, and it can be a storage of important discussions maybe that people have had, or it can have subpages, as we'll see, subpages dealing with specific issues. So it isn't just one massively long thing, but ultimately that is the function of the wiki. So as we'll talk about when we do issues, we have all the discussion and all the detail, but when something is resolved or closed or decided, you can install that on the wiki as, oh, this discussion was had, we decided this thing, and here's a link to the discussion if you want to see it, but we're not going to get involved in the detail on the wiki page, which is meant to be concise. All right, so I'm going to start the screen share so that we can see what we're doing. That's not a very interesting page, so let me just share the right page, which is this one. Got the usual thing of Zoom getting in the way of what I want to look at. Okay. All right. So I'm going to use, in my case, I'm going to use the kind of template thing that I started last time. Okay. So that's this is a blank, right? But it sort of is going to contain stuff that might be useful for other people. So hopefully you've all had a go at starting your own repository, and you've got this front page here, the so-called README. Which is the super short thing, which is what are people looking at? So if you want to share the project, it needs to go here. And so if someone comes here cold, they need to be able to read what is it. I haven't added that here. I've added a little bit, but not much. But your project needs to have what the heck is going on. What is this all about? Who can you contact if you want information? Who's involved? Really succinctly, okay? And then we'll talk about the issues next time, right? So this is this tab up here. We're going to do that next time. But the wiki is the one over here. I should emphasize that we, in using GitHub for open science projects, we've been improvising enormously. And we have, by we, I mean me and other people who've done open projects for the last 10 years or so, have used things like this page and the wiki and issues to great effect in the sense that it's helped people do things and share information and discuss things, right? But we haven't solved these problems, and we're probably not using it very well. And so this is definitely a work in progress. So for example, there's a bunch of other things, like actions and pull requests and projects and other stuff up here, which we don't really use very much. But if you want to explore that and try and figure out a way of doing things using those tools, great. So please don't just think that what we're going to talk about today is the end of it, because I'm sure there's lots more that we can do. One example we played with, so Edwin and I played for a while with trying to use GitHub more for having people submit things to the on the web page. So contributions to the web page, like a molecule, like the protein NMR of a molecule or something, submit that, and then to have it approved by someone and accepted into the project. So if you imagine that someone made a molecule and say, oh, I've made this molecule, and you say, well, where's the data? And so they submit an NMR spectrum or LCMS or something, and they submit that kind of conditionally as a request for approval. And then someone in the project says, yeah, that's fine, and clicks the accept button, and then it gets incorporated into the project. We thought we could do that for science projects. It's done a lot in software code where people suggest changes to the code, and they submit that as a request, a so-called pull request. And you can review it and then approve it, and it kind of gets merged into the project once it's approved. And that gets over this idea that open science projects sometimes don't have active peer review, because you never know if someone's looked at the contribution or not. It's just there, right? But we never really solved it, and it seemed really cumbersome for us, and so we never really solved it. But that's one example where the core function of GitHub as a collaboration tool, where people submit things and those things are approved and folded in, it would be great to include, but we just couldn't figure out a seamless way of doing it. That's what these pull requests and things are. And that's when you read about branches of projects, the word branch comes up quite a bit. The master and a branch project, that's what that is all about. It's about projects that kind of diverge and then recombine once things have been approved or accepted. All right, but separate from that, we're talking about the wiki. So it's this button up here. And I don't have anything here, right? So this is what you'll see when you click on yours. And so what you do is you just create the first page, and the first page is pretty dull. You just click on that and you say, I mean, you can keep that if you want to. This page is the wiki for this project. I mean, you can do whatever you want. Links are shown to the right, and you can put anything you want there, okay? And then just save the page, and then so you get that here now. If you want to edit the title of the page, you can do that. So you can edit this or edit this. So nothing is forever. You can always edit anything you want. And again, one of the nice things here, right, is that we are modifying content on a web page immediately without the need for any fancy software, right? It's really quite straightforward to use. All right. So the content, though, needs to be spelled out. And one thing that people typically do here is start adding in pages over here. And that's certainly something you can do. For some reason, we haven't done that a lot. And we found that it's easier to add this custom sidebar as a navigation medium. So let me show you one. I mean, here's one. So this is from Eve's project, where she's got her story so far. So this is her wiki page. And it's got the usual thing. And she's got all this stuff over on the right here, which is like your navigation pane. So you can see the different kind of things that she's talking about here. And there are different general headings, like the background to the project, and then any SAR, and then stuff about chemistry, and stuff about where the data are kept, and FAQs. Some of those are in red, which means those pages have been created, but there's nothing there yet. And some are in blue, which means there is content. To get that, and I find that quite useful, right? So you can sort of switch between pages pretty quickly, and it acts like a sort of shortcut menu system, which is quite nice. You can have anything you want here, but I think it helps to have that kind of pane on the right, which can allow you to navigate. So in order to get that on your wiki, you can go to an existing page and click on this little pencil, this edit sidebar, and it reveals what that sidebar looks like. which is all this stuff. So these little hashtags define a heading level, a bit like in Word. And these things in the double square brackets are links to a page that will be created when you type those things and save the page. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to select all of that and copy it, because I just want to take that over and then I can edit it later. And I'm just going to go back. So I've copied that text and I'm going to go back to my wiki page. And then rather than do this pages and home thing, I'm going to add a custom sidebar and I'm just going to paste that in. So that's the text that I took from Eve's page. And then I've got to look at it and just check it's all right. So the rules of participation are quite useful in case someone comes to the project and we can just copy that from somewhere else. The story so far is the big one. That's the main page that I think is of most interest. You can do a sub thing if you want about origin, so where the project came from, what data were the first data that started the project, who did that, those things. Eve's got a page about the target itself and about protein production, because that's been a big part of the project so far. So I think those were added in a bit later. I'm not going to have those for my example, so I'm just going to delete those. SAR is typically of interest for us, right, as a chemistry group. So we can have stuff about what's known about molecules and what their bioactivity. And then there's this catch-all page that we found quite useful. I mean, it's sometimes in a project that's busy, you get sent data and like an Excel sheet or something, or something that someone's done, and it gets sent in, and you can dump it somewhere on the repository or something, and but you don't yet have time to fold it in to the wiki properly. So this can be quite a useful page where you have links to things that have arrived but aren't yet fully digested, just so that nothing is lost. We found that can be quite handy, just to make sure we have it there. And then there's some chemistry stuff and sources of data and FAQ. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to save the page. And then suddenly I've got this thing on the right of my wiki page. So all that's there now. And so all these are links suddenly. And like I said, the red ones mean that it's empty, right? So there's nothing there yet. But they'll be there soon. All right. All right, yeah, good. Yeah, you shared a thing about shortcut keys, which is also really good. All right, so that's a way of getting your menu up and running. And then when you click on any of these red links, which are currently blank, so like the origins of the project, you get to a simple edit page like this where you can then add stuff. So here you would say this, mine's a phantom project, right? But this project arose from a screen done at UNC by Jeffrey, who and then the raw data may be found here, and then something else about what happened next, and then something about this project aims to build on this, or something like that. So you get an idea of what happened before you made this page, right? So where did all this stuff come from? Who did it? Where the data can be found. So if you then write in that text and clarify where the data can be found and who is involved, because that's a really important thing on open projects, to make it very clear who's done what and who needs to be credited, then again you just click save the page and the text is there. All right. And so you can do that for anything. Now this little link is blue because it's got something there. So you can do that for anything. Any of these pages, you can add in text about what has been going on and so on. You can add little things in here about different headings to make the page more interesting to read. So you can have headings and things. So for example, we can do heading H1, and if memory serves, you just sort of click that button and it adds a thing for you, if in case you can't remember that you need a little hashtag. And if you have like heading H2, then I think you can just click that. Yeah. So these add different headings, and if you save that, then you can see what effect that has. And so you have little things like that appear. So you can, there is a little bit of formatting that you can do, not much, but a little bit of formatting that you can do to make the page more readable. So if we just head back to Eve's page, 1 second. Okay, I've got my my page is slightly in the way here. All right. So in Eve's case, there's in the story so far, for example, those little background pages and stuff like that, um, and protein production and assays in one page, and it just makes it easier to see. Right? A very useful thing as well is if you can use, let me just hit the edit button so we can see what Eve's done. So she's used this heading 3 thing here. And the one of the very useful things about that is if you see this little symbol here, this little link symbol, then that can allow you to shortcut to that bit. So you see my URL is now, this page, but it's got a little hashtag and then the name of the section. So if you have a very long page, for example, and you've got a big story so far and you want to share a bit of the page with someone and say, the answer to your question is shown here, you can link to a specific part of the page as well, which is quite handy in case the page gets long. All right, so you can, of course, then decide on the content yourself. 2 of the key things that you're going to want to do are to link out to other things and put in pictures. Okay, those things are all very easy. The links thing is really easy. So the way to do a link in GitHub, if you wanted to link to some page here, then the way I find it easy to do, and let me just zoom in so you can see it. The easy way of doing it is putting square brackets around the word you want to link, and then putting regular brackets, and then copying in a URL. Okay, that will convert the word here into a link to a web page. Right, so whichever page of the data are on, like in a lab archives page or whatever it is, then you just copy your URL there and you paste it in there, and that converts the word here into a link. It's really simple. If you can't remember that, and I find it quicker to do that than not, then I think all you do is you click the word and then add the link, and you've got the text, and you can put the URL in. But it's often easier just to remember that it's square brackets for the word, and then the actual URL goes in regular brackets without a space between them. So it's very quick to put in links. And that means you can keep on linking out to stuff. Okay. And you want to do that because you want to keep the wiki brief, right? You want to keep it a summary of everything and the key points. So it's a little bit like a paper, again, where there are sentences and there are links to other papers and there are links to data, and you say, as shown in table 1, here's this. So the text is really succinct and you're constantly referring to other things. You want to do that here. Just be aware that if you add in links to things, that the internet is always susceptible to what's known as link rot, which is that over time, links to web pages can break down and go out of date. And it's a constant problem for Wikipedia, for example, is that there are all these links to these pages, like to articles in newspapers and stuff, that eventually die, and then the link's broken. So when you're linking to things, just try and make sure that you're linking to something which is likely to be permanent. So like if you want to link to a paper, then usually a journal web page is fine, but you can link to a DOI, for example, which is meant to be a permanent thing. You can link to a web page on PubMed or something. So it's unlikely that's going to break anytime soon. But try to avoid using too many links to articles in popular press, for example, or things that might break. Your links to your lab notebooks should stay. As long as your lab notebook's there, those should stay. But always try and imagine what might happen to make links break, and try and avoid those things so that we don't have to worry about links going out of date. All right, so using this, you can link to files and lab notebook pages. You can link to papers. You can also link to files that you yourself put in your own code area, and I'll talk about that now. So, in my case, at the moment, we don't have any files. As we talked about last time, you can put files here. Let me show you with Eve's example. So Eve, for example, has some pictures in her file store. Remember, it's like a file, it's like Dropbox, right? So there's folders and stuff, and there's files here, like picture files and stuff. So you can dump anything on the shared file store, either directly or using GitHub Desktop, like we talked about last time. So you can, for key files like PowerPoints or Excel sheets or anything like that, you can store them on GitHub and just put them up there in some way that's similar to the way you would organize things on your computer. And then you can link to these things too. So if you wanted to say that, so let me go back to my wiki, for example, and I'm talking about this. if I wanted to link to something like that, then the URL I would put here, I would go to one of my own files and I would copy the link to one of my own files that is like an Excel sheet that contains the initial data. I copy that link and then I go back to my wiki and put that in there. And then the page would then link to that file directly, which is on GitHub. So that's a perfectly good way of doing it. If we inherit a spreadsheet of data, for example, that starts a project, we can easily link to it that way and share the spreadsheet directly on here. If obviously, you know, I mean, the idea is with the open projects is that everything is open by default. So people who collaborate on these open projects should be aware of that, that essentially the default is open. And most of the people we work with do understand that, but sometimes in a big project like this, you do get inputs from people who maybe don't quite understand the open thing that we're doing, or don't understand the extremity of the open thing that we're doing. And so in some of those cases, it is sensible for you to double check that they are okay with some file that's been sent being shared as it is in the open. We had lots of cases in open source malaria, for example, in the early years, where people would do an assay in collaboration with another organization or something, and send data to the project and say, here's the PK results for some molecule, and we had to go and check that they're okay with us putting that thing in the public domain, because there may be something like a sheet there in the Excel sheet which has some proprietary, I don't know, picture even, or method that hasn't been published or something, which they don't necessarily want to share. So in some of those cases, it can make sense to check again. But if we're directly collaborating with people regularly, then everyone should know that files and things should be shared openly. Okay, but if in any doubt, then please check with them. Similarly, linking to papers is to academic papers is typically a better idea than trying to upload the PDF of the paper, for example, because I mean, it's not necessary really to have that, because so much we can access so much of the literature anyway. But some papers still aren't open access, particularly older papers, and are subject to copyright by the publisher. And so putting a PDF of a paper on a website like this can be problematic and illegal, actually. So much better to try and share the link to the paper as it is, rather than upload a PDF for the same reason. All right, so that covers the kind of setting up the page and starting to edit things and getting things looking okay. You don't really need this add a custom footer. I mean, I've never used it, but please play with it if you want to. And the pages thing, I've never really gone for. But again, please play around if you want to use that. Again, you can do whatever you want, just so long as it's clear to people, right? So we're aiming for clarity the whole time. Just as you do with an academic paper, you want to convey something really clearly in a short number of words about what is going on. So yeah, without lots and lots of detail. All right, and so I said there are two things that are really useful with the story so far. One is the links to other things, which you need to use a lot. And the other is obviously pictures. So we always like pictures in science, right? So there are two ways of doing pictures, and I actually only know one of them. So plead ignorance for the second one. But the way we use pictures in issues, as we'll talk about next time, is really easy because there's a bunch of drag and drop stuff. But the wiki it seems to my mind anyway to be a little more complicated, and you need to do something a bit special for that. Let me just try and find a good example of this. I'll come to that one in a second. But well, we can talk about the this is the Open Source Malaria Series 3 wiki, and so this is Inuo's project, and this page has actually been editing this. This page is an example of a complicated one, which has undergone many edits over time, as the mechanism of action has become clearer over time. Initially, we had an idea the mechanism of action was wrong, and it's now been sort of corrected. So you can see that there's a bunch of things here, like a picture and a bunch of links, and it's arranged in a way that hopefully makes it clear what's been going on. There's lots of links to where other discussions have been happening, which is also quite useful. So there's lots of other, links to issues where there's huge amounts of discussion about a certain thing, but it's linked here. So there's always a connection between any relevant discussions. And there's this picture here. Now I'm hoping that this picture uses, yeah, okay. So this picture here is, let me just go back and show you what it is. So that's a regular picture, right, that appears there. And you can click on it and look at it bigger. But the way it's put on the page is to use this kind of code that renders that picture immediately, right? So I don't know how to write that from scratch. I always copy something else that's done on another wiki because I don't want to remember that. But ultimately, what this is doing, if you can see that in the middle there is a link in between the inverted commas. Just missed my H there. In between the inverted commas, there is a link. There is a hyperlink to a picture. So this is on GitHub in Open Source Malaria Series 3. I don't know why the word blob is there, but then there's a link to an actual file, a .png, so it's an actual file. Either side of it, it's saying something about we're going to now render an image using a URL, and then there's something about aligning in the middle, which never seems to work for me, and how big the picture is. All right, and then there's a bunch of these, other bits and pieces, which you're always going to get wrong if you try and do it from scratch. But ultimately, what this is doing is that text is taking a picture that is elsewhere on GitHub and just rendering it on the page each time. All right, and that picture there is, you can follow where it is. It's on this wiki. Sorry, it's on this repository, Series 3, and it's got this location, so it's just sitting there. If we ever delete that file from the repository, then we'll screw up the picture. So that's another reason not necessarily to play too much with the files once you've uploaded them and linked them. But that renders the picture in that way. Okay, so if you upload a picture to your repository, you can always just link to that from any number of pages and render it in this way. And we have a little cheat sheet. This is on the Open Source Malaria Wiki. There's a TechOps, this is Open Source Malaria TechOps repository where we try and share things that we've used a lot. And if you forget, there is a thing about how to use issues, and there is a thing here where we've got the text that you need in case you want to copy it. And in case you can't find an existing wiki, right, which uses this, you can always take this and copy it, and then just all you got to do is change the link to your own picture, and then you can play around with the size of it and change that immediately. So if you wanted to upload a picture to your repository and then copy the link, and then copy this text into your wiki and then change the URL, you would be able to render any picture you wanted to. This requires you to upload your picture first, and then copy the link, right? And then put that in the page. So it works, it just takes a little bit of time. Once it's there, you can then change the shape, the size of it, and move it around, do whatever you want. But that's how you got to do it. Now, I said there's only one way of doing that. The other way of doing it is a slight mystery to me. And Eve, I think, has done this. Lots of other people have done this too. So Eve has done this as well, some others. But here is also another way of rendering an image. Right, and this involves a different set of code with an exclamation mark and an image, and then another link here to a picture file that Eve has added, right, which is not, as far as I'm aware, not part of the shared file system like the Dropbox thing that I just talked about, but it's somewhere else. If Yuhang or anybody who's done this before on a wiki, specifically on a wiki,
I have done this on issues, not on wiki.
Sure. No, it works really well on issues, right? But I don't know how to do it on a wiki. Is it just you drag it here? Does anyone happen to know?
What you can do is what I did was I create a new repository just as a backup just as a file backup repository, and I put it on that, and when I click in the picture, I copy the link, then put it here. So that's the tricky part. But it's very easy. Basically, the mechanism is you need to have a link. You need to have a link that's already registered on this website. That's why, yeah. So the link you just showed us was definitely copying from somewhere else. That's already being uploaded to the GitHub platform. As long as there's a picture register on the platform, it will be all right to be copying the link. But
right.
if it's
Okay.
not, then you can't drag it in.
Well, that actually might it might be that you can do it if it's on an issue or something, then yeah, because that's already got that is uploaded and it's got a link. So that, for example, is an image. I wonder if that works. That's already got a link that you can use there. I don't actually know. Because that is the link for that page. So I wonder if you could just do that. Maybe play with it. You know, so if the image is already somewhere else, as Yuhang says, you should be able to use it. It should have a link. So I think I mean, the images either go in your shared file system, in which case they're all ordered and it's nice, or they're just somewhere else on GitHub, right, with a link that you hope is permanent. It always makes me a little bit uneasy that I don't know where that file is. But you know, it is probably quicker to use an existing image if you want to. The only danger again is if you change this image, you will then change any other image that uses it. Yeah. All right, but maybe play around. Obviously, we need lots of images because we're scientists, right? So this is very helpful, and it's something that you should get good at. Is making sure that key images are in the wiki. Now, just on that though, element of a note of caution. It is so adding an image to the wiki is great. You know, it makes it a lot easier to understand and everything. But as time goes by, so as another month goes by on your project and things change and happen, then depressingly, the wiki, of course, becomes out of date. And you think, okay, well, we're no longer looking at these molecules. We're now looking at these ones because we, you know, didn't realize the fluorine was needed or blah, blah, blah. And so you go back to the wiki and think, oh no, you know, the page is now out of date because I was talking about the stuff that's last month, and now I've got to update it with the stuff of this month. And that means I've got to change the image and then upload the image and then refresh the page. And oh my God, I can't be bothered. So it is a risk of things going out of date. So try and write the wiki with this in mind. And there are a couple of ways of overcoming this problem with things needing to be changed the whole time. One is that you use the issues, which we'll talk about next time. You use the issues to talk about current things, and you can have pictures there, and you can refer to them there. So you can have link to discussions that are ongoing elsewhere. So you could say, for example, it was realized in July 2023 that a trifluoromethyl group was important for the thing, and you can just link to that discussion, and that's all you need to do. You don't need another image there. You can link to a discussion that's happened elsewhere. Okay, just so long as people can understand what's going on. That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is to have a page where you have a kind of section at the bottom of the page where you have kind of archived material or something. And so you just punt that to the bottom, and then you add a new picture or a new idea up above it as something which is more current, if you don't want to delete anything. So if you want to still refer to it, you can keep it on the page, but just make it clear that it's a bit out of date. But ultimately, the reason why the story so far takes time is because you do have to try and keep it reasonably up to date, right? So, I mean, an edit a month is the absolute minimum, I would suggest, of making sure that you've captured what's going on. And it's meant to be the source of everything. Now, there can be sub pages, as we talked about, like SAR and biology and things like that. But the story so far is meant to be the sort of master copy of that. Okay, so that was the writing text and including links, and then something to do with pictures. Remember that pictures are great for humans, but they are invisible to Google and other search engines. So, for example, in this image, which is on a issue, but it doesn't matter. In this image, no search engine of any kind will be able to see that molecule, right? They know it's a picture of something, but they don't know what it is. And no search engine will pick up the phrase WH15. So if you search in Google for WH15, it will not find that image. It will, because that exact phrase is already in the text there. Okay, so then it'll be found. But just be aware, when you put an image up, it's invisible to search engines. And if you want them to be discovered better, you need to keep key bits of text, like molecule names or certainly things like smile strings. You want to keep those out of the picture if you want them to be picked up. Just to be aware of that. So if you find yourself in images putting lots of text, you might want to think about taking that text and putting it into the actual text on the page rather than in the image for that reason. Okay. All right. And then, okay, so then I was going to cover one last thing before we finish. This is issue, which is a distraction. Let me get away from that. One last thing, which is, I think, so we've talked a little bit previously about this idea of a story so far, about where the project is up to, a succinct description of what's going on. And in theory, you could use this page to write up a sort of living, draft living paper of where we're up to in a way that you could almost submit for publication, right? So you can make it formal like that if you wanted to. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. So you write it actually not so much as a kind of wiki article for people, but actually more like a paper, so that you would have the title and authors and affiliations and intro paragraph and then key results, and then you add to those results as the project goes on. That's fine, right? And ultimately, that's what we're going to publish. We're going to publish an article that includes this work in a way that can be understood by other scientists, which is what this page should be. So if you wanted to do that, such as substitute the story so far for and make that as a living paper, that is awesome. And that would really work. And as you can see, it is quite a nice, simple way of writing papers, because it's immediate and quite straightforward and uncomplicated. The other way of doing it, though, in the public domain, is to instead write a living paper on something which is more suited to collaborative writing with images and other things. And the best one that we have, I think, is Google Docs, where this is a paper which you can, it's just a doc, right? So you can add things in, you can share it with people, and you can make it completely open. So in the sharing for Google Docs, you can add in anyone with a link can view the paper, for example, and it's a piece of cake to do that. So anyone who has the link to the paper can just see what you're writing. If you want to be really daring, you can allow anyone with a view to edit, but that's a little bit dangerous in case you get bad actors, which we've never had, by the way, but in case you get bad actors. But you can make it completely so this is now open online. And there's a link there to this. So if I share that with anybody, they will be able to see me writing this. And of course, on Google Docs, it's very easy to put on pictures and format things and do things that are more complicated than you can do on GitHub.
Sorry, Matt, just one question. Where did you click, please, to share, to change the privacy?
Just up here on the top right.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
That little share button. And so you would have to, so you would need to create this through your Google account, which is a slight downer, right? So you would need a Google account to be able to create a document, but lots of us have those things. If there's another solution, great. But again, it just needs to be something where it looks a bit like a Word document and you can share things, including images, and then you can share it publicly online. But obviously, this is a more a well-known way of doing papers for us because we're used to writing things in Word, right? So you can do that too, right? And then you can copy this link, which is just the link for the paper. And then you can go back to your repository here. I'm just going to make sure I'm on the right one. I'm not going to vandalize Eve's thing. And then in your story so far, you can say let me just make that bigger. Current summary of this project is being written as a living paper here, and then just include that link, and then that means that the people don't waste time here, and they can then find the paper over here, right? So it's just if you don't want to like this platform for this, you can do it somewhere else. A lot of people prefer to do that. Remember, the links they exist. If you want to share these links anytime soon, then you can take these extremely complicated URLs and make them nice. The one that I use quite a lot is the tiny URL. If you really want to do that, so you can if this is for sort of sharing, you can take a really long and cumbersome URL and make something really small with it. So, for example, what is this? What am I going to call this? A repo example paper or something like that, right? And I shorten the URL, and then so this thing, I'm going to copy that and go back over here and edit this, and you'll see what I mean. So this is the existing link, which still works. A short the short version of this URL is that. So that is maybe a slightly easier way of sharing a URL if you really want to, but it's cosmetic. You don't need to do that if you don't want to. But these two are now the same. So when you click on this, a little request goes to tiny URL, and it says, oh, what you mean is this thing. And that's if you want to. Sometimes people prefer that for sharing their lab notebooks and things like that. You can make a shorter URL that's a bit easier to see. But it's cosmetic. It doesn't really mean anything. And then just a couple of short things here. Two important pages at the bottom. One is the frequently asked questions thing. Now, that's for people who say, well, you know, what the heck is this all about, kind of thing. And that, I think we've got a version of that somewhere. Let me just check. So again, you know, don't write these things. You've got to copy them over from somewhere else. I think there is a general repository about open chemistry networks, and there is a wiki there. Oh no, there isn't a wiki there. That's irritating. All right, well, that's no good. It's the FAQs there. It's on the SGC page. That's what it is. So there is an existing SGC page which has FAQs, which talks about what these projects are. For those of you who are doing SGC projects, obviously, which is most of us at the moment, and so you can just link to that, right? So you can find that page and then link to this thing here. So there's the FAQs and the terms and conditions if you want them and stuff like that. So what you can do then is just go to the SGC page, which I just closed by mistake, and then go back to your repository and say, for all the FAQs, go here or something like that, right? Just to make it so that if someone comes along, you know, and says, how on earth does all this work? They can get some answers there. All right, so some FAQs. And then the sources of data is also really important. And this is where you can put in all the links to the various things that are working, the raw data on the project. So if for OSM Series 3, for example, there's a bunch of things here, right? So links to people's lab notebooks, previous students who worked on the project, reports and theses that have been published and uploaded to GitHub, a bunch of other things to do with GitHub discussions and you know, the sheets of all the molecules we've got. So, you know, the big things that you access all the time. So for the Ready Avid projects, for example, you know, we might want to put up things about, here's we use signals, and you can link to that there, even though you can't see it. There's the David for all the biological data, and then anything else that we write that's really important, like any lab notebooks we can see, or anything else that we can link to as being where to find all the raw data, that would go here. Admittedly, for the Ready Avid projects, it's complicated because a lot of the lab notebooks can't yet be seen publicly, so the links will hit a wall. But for the big series of raw data, we can link to anything there. If, for example, any of you ever have an openly available raw data set, so for example, in your project, Shin, on your student project on the solubility side of things, that spreadsheet of all the molecules and all the measured solubility data and aggregation data, that URL can go in the sources of data thing, for example, for that project, as one example. All right, so that's all I wanted to cover, really, and the rest of it is up to you in terms of playing with it. So you can see on this wiki there are slightly different headings based on the project. All right, so these can be added in or taken away as the project goes on. Some projects start obviously with a screen, and so you have, you know, the origin of the project is the screen and link to the data, and then there will be a point where you do some resynthesis, right? And you might want to put that on on a different page, or you can put it on the bottom of the origins of the project page. And then, you know, there may be something about when one hit becomes validated and key, then you might want to start a page about some of the SAR stuff, and you might want to start saying, well, we have this hit, and then we started looking at what was around it, and that would be a separate page that talks about the SAR. But it's really up to you how you want to present the data, and you can of course move things around as the project goes on. As we get protein made, for example, you can have a page about, you know, protein generation and any discussions or data relevant to that. And it is, as we'll talk about with the issues, the wiki is a very good place to make sure that nothing is lost. So we'll mention this next time, but with issues, you have discussions, and sometimes those discussions, they come to an end because they're resolved or they just become old or outdated. And you can, as you'll see, close the issues and sort of take them off the table, so they don't clutter things up. But you don't want to lose them at any point. And so often the wiki is a good place to link to those closed issues to make sure that they are essentially immortalized, that you don't then lose track of a discussion that was had and which has been sort of archived a little bit. The wiki is a good place to keep those links going, so nothing is forgotten. All right, I think that is everything. Yeah, you.
I think I just tried. I think the GitHub might have updated its option for uploading pictures. If you don't mind, I can share my screen.
Oh yeah, great. Hang on a sec.
You guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so this is my test page, test repository.
Yeah.
Repository, sorry. We go with Wiki.
Yeah.
That's probably where you guys are having problem with uploading. Then we go with
Reveals your working method very nicely.
Yeah, that's just a reminder, like how to for the hotkeys.
Right.
Then, for example, we just this is one curve that's from HPLC. Just
No,
dragging.
you're sharing your web browser. Can't see that, by the way.
Oh, okay.
The curve
So
you mentioned.
I literally, oh, okay. I literally just drag one picture from my desktop to this page.
Into the wiki.
Yeah, into the wiki.
Oh,
Now
really?
it's done. I just drag it, and this is exactly the same format of link you just showed, right?
Oh yeah, great.
Oh, it's basically the same. Then we save the page.
So you think you can drag and drop directly?
Yeah, I can drag and drop right now. I think
great. Okay.
it wasn't available years ago.
Yeah.
So
that's good. That would be a lot simpler, I think.
Yeah, I think they realized this because it would be weird. We can drag pictures into issues, but we can't drag pictures into wiki.
Yeah. All right. That's sensational. Great. So that's a lot simpler if you want to do that. And so maybe people could try that. If you've got a key image of, you know, the molecules that you are interested in, you know, the main hit from a screen or something, and you want to put the picture of it in there, maybe have a go at dragging that into a wiki page that talks about the origin of the project and see how you go. That's good. A very quick note about ChemDraw files. Sometimes GitHub doesn't like ChemDraw files. We've had issues where we've uploaded a ChemDraw file and tried to download it and it's become corrupted, and of course it doesn't render them. So if you drag them onto an issue, it doesn't know what it is. If you ever have problems sharing a ChemDraw file in some way, you can just zip it and make an archive file and then drag that, and that solves that problem. I think we asked GitHub to allow ChemDraw files to be handled better or to be an acceptable file format, but I don't think there's that many chemistry users of GitHub yet, so it wasn't a particularly important request for.
We can make it as we can make it as image as well, save it as image and drag it into
right. But if you ever having a discussion with someone which involves a big ChemDraw sheet of molecules for like a purchase or an SAR discussion, sometimes it's nice to share the actual ChemDraw file so they can download it and take the molecules and start playing with them rather than having to redraw everything. So yeah, it's sometimes nice to share the image and the ChemDraw for big things, but it's not important to do it all the time. Yeah. All right. Any other queries? I know it's a lot to take in, but any other queries? This should help people get going. Like I said, it's an exercise in clarity, right? So clarifying to people what the project is and what's been going on. It's essential in science that we're good at doing this, to explain to people what the project is all about and what we've discovered. And of course, the advantage, as anyone knows who's written anything in science, the advantage of doing this, of going to the trouble of writing about what you've done, can really help you clarify in your mind whether or not you have actually demonstrated something, on whether you have covered all of the questions and done the control experiments, and whether you can say what you think you're saying. And that's why writing a paper is so great, is because it makes you think, can I actually say this, or do I need to do something else? Have I thought of everything that I could have? So writing this is not just about advertising by any means. It's not just about getting your stuff in order. It's also about thinking about what you know, which is really constructive, I think, and good discipline as research scientists. It turns out also that because it's publicly available, it's a great way of sharing what we're doing, which is just awesome. But it should help your core mission of achieving, new results too. All right, awesome. Well, if there's nothing else, we can stop there, and I will set up the third and final session on issues, which hopefully will be pretty simple now that you've dealt with the wiki.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Yeah, all right, good. Nice to see everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
You
Thank
soon.
you so much. See you guys.